name's Paul, and thank you for joining me in relation to this pre-seen strategic analysis of ZedEx office furniture. Obviously, this video relates to your MCS exam for November 2017, and I'm hoping that what I do over the next sort of 45 minutes or so will ensure your success. A couple of things that I'd like you to do before you actually watch this video, and the reason that I say this is that I'd like you to get the most that you can out of your time. Your time is valuable. What I would suggest you do is this: read the pre-seen material at least twice and make some very, very brief or light notes, okay? Now, the reason that I suggest that is that, looking at this video without having any real understanding of the company or any real knowledge of the company is going to sort of lessen its impact. I think it's important that we see the pre-seen material in context, and that when you're watching this video, you have some feel already for this company, its background, its financials, and indeed how it operates, okay? The second thing that I think we need to recognize is that this document that underpins this video, and indeed the video itself, is really a starting point in your studies. What I would suggest you do over the next 6 or 7 weeks leading up into your MCS exam in November 2017 is add to this document. You should be looking to do some of your own industry research in relation to companies in the market like ZedEx and indeed the industry generally. So, what I wouldn't do is simply buy a strategic analysis off the shelf and not do anything with it. Do add to it. Do get involved with this case and try and get inside the minds of the board of directors of this particular company. That's going to enable you, or indeed help you, to be able to answer questions on the big day, on exam day. Okay. Third point really is, do take some notes while you're listening to this video. Don't read it passively. The way to learn is to learn actively. So make some notes as you go, and indeed, if there are any points in the video that really don't make sense to you, that you don't understand, then certainly drop me an email at Practice Test Academy. Okay, so without further ado, let's crack on. Let's look at our what I've called our executive summary. Okay, now obviously I'm not going to spend time reading material to you throughout this webinar. Broadly speaking, our executive summary here just sets out broadly what I've just said. We're talking about ZedEx. I'm going to look at a series of models and tools within the strategic analysis to give you a feel, or indeed a snapshot, as to where they are right now, and indeed further to that, where they may go in the future. I mean, let's recognize that, we're all trying to predict what comes up on the day of the exam, and that's quite difficult to do. But I think with the firm understanding of the strategic position of the company right now, we probably get a better feel on the likely topics in the exam. So my executive summary here simply says, well, we're going to use a set of tools over the course of the next 40 minutes or so to really analyze this company, see where it is, and really see where it's going. I'm going to start you off, as you can see here, really with a timeline for ZedEx. And what I mean by that is, ZedEx set themselves up, or indeed Henry Lund did, in 1983. So really, what have they been doing since 1983 to develop into this multi-million KS dollar company? Well, they've had a lot of success. If you think back, we're talking about over 30 years, so a lot has happened for them. So the first thing that I'll do is I've developed just a very short timeline that takes you through the main changes in their business, really from their inception right up to date to 2017. And as you'll see from points 2, indeed all the way to point 8, is what I've chosen is a series of strategic tools to enable us to analyze this business, really starting with the idea of strategy formulation, moving all the way through 5 forces, etc., Mendello, Porter's diamond, and we're going to sort of conclude on Porter's generic strategies. So what you'll see is each of the models. I'll give you a quick definition. I do like to use my webinars as a form of revision for students, but let's ensure that we take in the points that are annotated on each of the models shown, but also let's recognize that really any of the models here could be used as a basis for the question in your MCS exam. Your MCS examiner has a sort of a tendency to be quite broad. Many of the models here you'll see are based on the E stream or indeed E2. So obviously he will examine over the 4 different sections in your exam, P2 and F2, but certainly from an E2 perspective, the models included here are very, very examinable. So for example, in my experience of teaching the MCS exam since it came in 2015, you'll see reasonably often that you may be asked to do some sort of Mendelow's matrix or mapping of stakeholders. In the same way, you see a very common usage of Porter's 5 forces. So let's make sure when you get to exam day, not just that you've done your further strategic analysis based on the information that I'm supplying here, but let's make sure that you have a solid understanding of all of these models, because any one of them could easily be examined in your exam. Let's move on to our next slide, everybody. Mendelow's matrix. Now, we should be familiar with our studies. This is all about mapping, isn't it? Every business that exists deals with stakeholders, and managing them, particularly where situations get a bit messy, let's say that there's conflict, managing them is important. We need to have ways and means of managing stakeholders. So what does Mendelow's say? As you'll see the definition up at the top there, he simply provides us with a grid based on power and interest that enables a business or an entity to simply map or prioritize their stakeholders. Now, what's important in terms of prioritization, and would Mendelow's matrix form a question in your MCS exam in November? It certainly would. I've seen Mendelow's matrix come up. It doesn't come up every sitting, it doesn't come up on all of the variants in the given exam week, not at all, but it does come up. So let's not walk into the exam without knowing where the main people, the main stakeholders, where they classify. Now again, a little bit like going back to the Porter's 5 forces slide, one or two of the inclusions, one or two of my annotations here, you might argue with them. So you might say to me, for example, well, I don't know if customers, should be a key player. Perhaps they should just be here under keep satisfied with low levels of interest and indeed high power, obviously the power to walk away, and that would be a valid argument. But I think there or thereabouts, I think our summary here in my annotations are about right. So I'm going to focus on who's important here. Key players. Clearly Henry Lund is a key player. This gentleman, this CEO, this MD, he runs this business. Okay, so what he thinks, what he does is very, very important. Outside of that, obviously the board, including Anna Brent and Eric DeWitt, etc., I would say that they're key players. They certainly have a high level of interest in everything that ZedEx does, and indeed they have high power. Obviously, given the fact that they're on board, what we don't want to happen is we don't want to be losing any of our key players. We don't be losing Anna Brent or indeed Eric DeWitt.